In light of the current state of the nation, I'd like to call your attention to a chilling statement made by President Ronald Reagan. He said, "One of these days, you and I are going to spend our sunset years telling our children and our grandchildren what it once was like in America when men were free." I'm sure there were many who thought this comment was both unbelievable and inconceivable. But today, we totter precariously on the brink of the fulfillment of that dreadful prophecy. An old preacher told me long ago, if you want to know what's coming around the bend, you don't have to be a prophet. All you got to do is watch the trends. But making a living and raising a family don't leave a lot of time for paying attention, so with your permission, I'd like to offer up these few thoughts, comments, and observations. I've traveled a lot of miles down this winding road of life. The journey started in Arkansas back in 1939. I've watched this nation make the fatal turn from right to left, watched its precepts trampled down and its honor ripped to shreds. They've passed so many laws denying God and promoting sin till I hardly recognize the country that I was blessed to grow up in. We've gone from a God-fearing people living by the golden rule to a culture that no longer believes in God and hates those of us that do. Freedom of speech was a real big deal back when this country was young. The First Amendment to the Constitution gave that right to everyone. But today, freedom of speech can only be practiced by a chosen few. If you're not a liberal, a pagan, or a pervert, it no longer applies to you. Our founding fathers also guaranteed we'd all have freedom of religion, the right to worship God according to the dictates of our heart, without fear or retribution. But the same bunch that stole freedom of speech is stealing that right too. And the church today is being told what it can say, where it can say it, and what it can do. When I started school back in '44, World War II was raging. Back then, one nation under God was still a true and factual statement. The United States of America was a land of pride and patriotism, and I guarantee you, if you heard the Star-Spangled Banner playing, everybody was standing at attention. Before God was banished from the classroom, let me tell you how it was. We prayed and pledged allegiance to Old Glory on the wall. There was a Bible on the teacher's desk, and we were taught honesty and respect, and sex didn't get all tangled up with reading, writing, and arithmetic. The teacher'd tan your hide if you acted up or broke the rules. If you got spanked when you got home, you could count on number 2. We were taught the difference between right and wrong, that some rules didn't bend, and the junk they're teaching our kids today would have never passed muster back then. Believe it or not, when I grew up, everybody had knives and guns. Why, hunting, fishing, shooting, and whittling was as common as chewing gum. Lethal weapons were everywhere, but nobody ever got shot, which proves that honest folks with guns ain't what's causing this killing problem we've got. And what about kids today? Can you believe they're so confused that personal sexual identity has to be taught in the public school? If I was teaching that class, it'd be short and sweet, blunt and frank. I just tell them, go stand naked in front of a mirror. And that'll tell you what you are, what you ain't. But I guess we shouldn't be surprised at this obscene generation with gays, lesbians, and the transgender crowd making weird sex a national obsession. Absolutes have been abolished and the culture knows no shame, from the White House to the outhouse. They applaud the sinners and curse the saints. Back in the good old days, when folks had brains and common sense, they didn't need gays, judges, and politicians to tell them what marriage meant. I don't mean to imply everybody was perfect in Grandma and Grandpa's day, but they had sense enough to know right from wrong and the guts to call a spade a spade. We got a country full of illegals now, eating our milk and honey, stealing our jobs and our paychecks. And all our elected officials want to do is shake their hand and pat them on the back. They get to vote, be on welfare rolls, don't pay no income tax. Sure would be nice if the government decided to treat the rest of us folks like that. And this idiotic liberal doctrine of diversity is splitting our country deep and wide. In one generation, it's turned one nation under God into the Great Divide. We've sacrificed our national heritage on the altar of ethnic labels and exchanged a common language for a bunch of foreign babble. We've turned our backs on our allies, left them twisting in the wind, tried to kiss up to our enemies, which ain't working, so now we've got no friends. We're in hock up to our neck to nations that hate our guts, and nothing's gonna change unless we the people start waking up. I figure our founding fathers would be rolling over in their graves if they could see the crop of shysters we got running things today. And some of us just sat on our duff while others voted these clowns in. Either way, we paid the fiddler, and the dance is about to begin. But lest we be found guilty of judging others and not ourselves, the 17th chapter of John reveals in great detail how the church has failed. We've wrapped our religious robes so tight around our heads till we can't even fellowship with each other, much less take the wine and break the bread. There's a church on every corner, two in the middle of the block, but instead of just living the gospel, we let our theology divide the flock. While the haters of all things holy run roughshod across this land, we split hairs over creeds and doctrines instead of coming together and taking a stand. The Bible makes it pretty clear what Christians are supposed to do: shine the light, stand for right, love the lost and each other too. I think it's pretty evident we've all come short and missed the mark, and our divided religious kingdoms are never going to be enough to push back the dark. So welcome to the new USA, where anything goes and God's in the way. What happened to America the Beautiful, that shining city on a hill? How'd we get from who we were to who we are? Or do we even care? This little rant could go on and on and on and on and on, but you're probably tired of listening, so I'll just say this and I'm done. The God that made America great still sits high upon his throne. Only now, he's watching us go to hell, and we're going, almost gone.
In these troubled times at home and abroad, challenging times for American families, I'd like to encourage you to do one more thing. Pray for our country. But as you do so, please pray as Lincoln said was his prayer. Not so much that God would be on our side, but that we would be, in his words, on God's side. Because I truly do believe in my heart of hearts that what's been true for millennia is still true today. That if his people, who are called by his name, will humble themselves and pray, he'll again do as he's always done throughout the storied history of this nation. He'll hear from heaven, and he'll heal our land. This one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to address you today. May God bless you, your families, this community of faith, your church, and may God continue to bless the United States of America.